There is an ancient letter, yellowed by the touch of 5 centuries, resting under 7 locks deep within the Vatican's secret archives. It is not merely parchment. Its very fibers seem to breathe with the sorrow of history. A fragile blend of ink, tears, and faint reddish stains that scholars still whisper may hold traces of grief too deep for words. The archivists who have seen it, few and sworn to silence, describe the handwriting as elegant but trembling, written in a fine Florentine hand. The letter should never have existed. It was never meant for history, nor for the eyes of kings or priests. It is the private confession of a young girl, not yet 15, whose destiny was to become a queen. But on the night when Europe celebrated her as the bride of France, something within her shattered, not by war or sword, but by a ritual of cruelty cloaked in ceremony. From that night onward, Catherine de Medici was never the same. Her innocence died quietly, yet from its ashes rose something the world had never seen. A mind sharpened by humiliation, and a heart that learned to endure until endurance itself became power. Catherine arrived in France from the glorious but perilous city of Florence, born of the Medici, a family that ruled with intellect and intrigue rather than armies. Her marriage to Henry of Orleans, the second son of the French king, was no simple union of youth. It was a chess move between popes and monarchs, between Rome and Paris, between the church and the crown. To the papal court, she symbolized alliance, the merging of Italian intellect and French nobility. To the Florentines, she was the Medici pearl, proof that their line could reach even the throne of France. Catherine herself dreamed only of peace, perhaps of love, perhaps of admiration. She was fluent in Latin and Greek, skilled in poetry and philosophy, and taught from childhood to read the faces of men more carefully than their words. Her tutors had told her that a queen must rule first with the eyes, and only later with the crown. Yet all the learning of Florence could not prepare her for what awaited her beyond the gilded gates of the French court. Beneath the perfume and candlelight of the palaces lay an undercurrent of superstition, jealousy, and secret rites. Among these whispers was one particularly ancient and forbidden custom, a so-called purification ritual, said to test the obedience and composure of foreign brides before they were accepted by the blood of France. Catherine, young and trusting, knew nothing of this custom. She believed the torches and bells that filled the night were part of her wedding celebration. The palace glowed with music and laughter as she was led through long stone corridors, her silk gown trailing softly over marble floors. But as she walked deeper into the palace, the noise faded into a strange stillness. The air thickened with incense, the laughter died away, and the torches flickered like watchful eyes. What awaited her at the end of that corridor would turn her destiny forever. Her young husband, Henry of Orleans, was barely 15, tall, proud, yet uncertain. His heart, however, belonged not to his bride, but to Diane de Poitiers, a woman nearly twice her age, celebrated for her beauty and feared for her influence. Diane had ruled Henry's affections since his boyhood. She was his mentor, his confidant, and his compass in all matters of the heart. It was Diane, history suggests, who orchestrated the events of that first night. Not from jealousy, but from calculation. She intended to make sure that the Italian girl who had come to share her beloved Henry's life would remain submissive, controlled, and humiliated before the court. That night, as Catherine entered the chamber she believed was meant for her and Henry alone, a hidden audience watched from behind narrow openings in the walls. 23 noblemen of France, hand-picked by Diane herself. They whispered and observed, their faces glowing in the half-light, eyes reflecting the cruelty of curiosity disguised as ceremony. It was called a test of dignity. In truth, it was nothing but the spectacle of degradation. Catherine never screamed, not once. She stood, trembling but silent, as the ritual unfolded, a symbolic act designed to rob her of privacy, to reduce her to a display of foreign obedience. By dawn, the laughter behind the walls had ceased. The girl who had stepped into the palace as a bride was gone. In her place stood a woman who would one day rule empires through silence and patience alone. That morning, as the sun rose over the gardens of Fontainebleau, Catherine's attendants noticed her pale face streaked with red at the corners of her eyes, a rare medical condition called hemolacria, the shedding of tears mixed with blood. The physicians called it exhaustion. The court called it a bad omen. But Catherine knew it was something else entirely, the birthmark of her rebirth. In the days that followed, Catherine barely spoke. She walked the marble halls like a shadow, quiet and unreadable. Many at court took her silence for submission, but silence, as Catherine would prove, can be sharper than speech. Each night, when the palace slept, she began to write. On thin parchment bound in dark leather, she recorded names, one by one, of those who had watched and laughed. Next to each name, she marked small symbols, a cup, a dagger, a crown, a vial. No one knew of this diary. It was not a book of hatred. It was a ledger of memory. And memory, in Catherine's world, was the first step toward justice. Her education at the monastery of St. Lucia now served her in ways her tutors could never have imagined. She had studied medicine and alchemy under Florentine scholars, learning the properties of herbs, metals, and human behavior alike. To most, these were curiosities. To her, they became the alphabet of control. She learned how a man's pulse revealed his fear, how a scent could alter mood, how a word spoken twice could become a command. At court, Catherine appeared every bit the perfect queen, soft-spoken, graceful, and loyal. But beneath that serenity, a new intelligence began to take shape. cold, precise, and patient. Every smile she gave was measured, every ally she made intentional, every insult remembered. And when the time came, she began to move her pieces. 3 years later, the whispers began. A nobleman, one who had mocked Catherine on her wedding night, suddenly fell ill. His servant spoke of fevers, strange dreams, and a bitter taste before death. Soon after, another fell, then another. The court called it bad luck. The priests called it divine justice. Catherine called it balance. Each time, a small crystal vial was found in the dead man's chambers, filled with a red liquid and sealed with wax. Sometimes a parchment accompanied it, bearing a single Latin phrase, memento quid vidisti, meaning, remember what you saw. No one could prove anything.
No one dared accuse the queen, but fear began to spread like perfume through the corridors of the Louvre. The Italian girl they once mocked now moved through the court with an aura that silenced laughter. Ministers bowed lower. Nobles avoided her gaze. They began to whisper a new name for her, the Silent Queen. And later, when her legend darkened further, the Black Queen of France. By the time Henry of Orleans ascended the throne as King Henry II, Diane de Poitiers still ruled his heart, but Catherine ruled the shadows. Her influence stretched through alchemists, scholars, and foreign envoys. She listened, observed, and waited. And slowly she began to weave her true masterpiece, the quiet reshaping of France itself. Years passed. France changed its kings, its councils, its loyalties, but Catherine de Medici remained. Like the marble statues that lined the halls of the Louvre, she endured. The courtiers grew old, their children replaced them, but the queen never lost her composure or her silence. Her enemies still whispered of the mysterious deaths that followed her rise, yet none could ever accuse her openly. For each time